What is up, y'all? My name's Sam, and this video is going to be the second in the Disc Golf Masters Beginner's Guide. This video is about the discs. So, at this point, I've unlocked all of the discs in the game, which is a pretty large selection. Right now, in my bag, I have the basic 3 discs that you start with unlocked: the Pure, the Fuse, and the Explorer. And I'm going to go through, build a bag, show you what a few different discs do. And I'm also going to discuss what the meta bag is. So let's start with the putters. In a lot of bags, you'll generally see 2 putters, 1 or 2 putters. In a 1 putter bag, you'll either see a straight to slightly understable putter. That means it's going to want to go straight or turn ever so slightly to the right on a right-hand backhand. Or you'll see a slightly overstable putter. So a Judge, a Dagger, or a P2. So that's a 1 putter bag. If you go with a 2 putter bag, you'll likely see one of the more understable or straight putters. So that's going to be your Rico, your Maiden, your Pure, or your Peak. And then one of the more overstable putters. So you might use a Dagger, a Judge, a P2, or you'll also see people using the Jury. And there is, I believe, also a Harp in the game that some people have. Not fully sure where that was found, but some people will also use the Harp instead of the Jury for that very overstable putter. For my bag, I prefer the Peak. For my straight to understable putter, it goes extremely straight. It's got a tiny bit of curve to the right initially, and a tiny bit of fade at the end. It just goes pretty much wherever you aim. And then for my overstable putter, I like the Jury. It's a nice overstable putter. You can rip on it, it's not going to turn. For my mid-ranges, so for mid-ranges, there's really 3 types right now. You've got your understable mid. Right now that's just the Fuse and the Sphere. This fun guy is also a Fuse, that's the one I prefer. It's the I'm a Fuse stamp, if you've ever played Disc Golf Valley. That's unlocked from the shop. So I prefer that one. The Sphere is very similar to a Fuse. And then you've also got your more straight to overstable mids. So you've got the MD1, MD3, Compass, Gut, and Truth. So the MD1 is probably the furthest flying of these straight mids, straight to overstable mids. And then the MD3 is just a very slightly shorter version of the MD1. You can use either of these. The Compass has the exact same flight as the MD3. The Gut is a slightly shorter flying version of the Compass or MD3. And then the Truth, slightly longer, but also just a tiny bit more understable than the Compass or the MD3. And then the last mid-range that we have is the Warship. It fits in the slot between your Fuse or your Sphere and the MD3 style disc. I prefer the MD3 for my second mid slot. So for a lot of bags, you'll see that one understable mid and that one straight mid. There aren't really any overstable mids in the game right now. Your next slot is going to be your fairways. I've got a good number of duplicates due to being an early access playtester, and there was a glitch that removed some discs from your inventory. So I was able to both rebuy from the shop, as well as have them returned when the glitch was fixed. That's why I have so many duplicates of some of these. Now, the Explorer is going to be pretty straight with a little bit of fade at the end. Now, your FD1 slot or your Fortress, that's going to be your more overstable fairway. And you've got like the Brave, the Escape, and the Malm as sort of that slightly longer just flip and then just go straight fairway. The Maverick goes forever. It's a bomber fairway, quite understable. And then the last fairway that we have is the CD1. This is the furthest flying fairway in the game. And it's got some turn at the beginning, but it ends up going relatively straight. For my bag, I like the Fortress as an overstable fairway. A little more overstable and a little further flying than the Explorer. And the other slot that I like is the Maverick. It's got a lot of turn to it, and it's just a nice understable counterpart to the other fairways. And then finally, the distance drivers. The options right now are the DD3. This blue one came from the shop. This gold one came from one of the courses. And then the Ballista, the Gold, the Captain, the Rive, and the Prince. I'd say DD3, Ballista, and Gold all have similar flights. The Ballista and Gold are slightly shorter than the DD3. The Captain, you could kind of see as a slightly longer version of the DD3, because the DD3, it's got a sort of S-turn flight, and the Captain has a slightly longer one with a little more early turn. The Prince, very overstable, and it's also the shortest of the distance drivers. The Rive, I'd say it's probably the second most overstable of the distance drivers, only behind the Prince, and it just bombs. This is probably one of the furthest flying discs in the game, and my distance driver lineup when I play is the Rive. Not what I wanted to do. Back to distance drivers. So, my lineup is the Rive paired with the Captain. I've found that Rive plus Captain gets you all the distance driver shots you need. And then if you need something to kind of fill in the gaps, the Maverick, Explorer, and Fortress really do that well. So, for unlocking discs, there's two ways to do it. There's the reward track. This is where you can get the P2, the MD1, yeah. This is where you get the CD1 and MD3, the Jury and the Truth, the Maverick and the Captain, the Rico and Svea. This one is the Malm and the Gold. And then in the second row we have the Dagger and Compass, then the Brave and Ballista, the Maiden and Warship, then the Fortress and Prince. Then also in the shop you've got, in this big slot, you can unlock the I'm a Fuse, and then the Hoodie, and then the Jonathan outfit. This one you've got a visor and the sun hat. This one is the Enzo t-shirt. Some pants for male only and female only. This slot is some simple glasses and then the sport sunglasses. And then this slot is the white shoes and then the outdoor shoes. So, just gonna hop into a solo round. Ken Park Silver lets you really use a lot of your discs for a simple 9-hole course, so I'll hop into a round on here and show you what some of these discs do. I've still got aim assist on, that's fine. So for this hole, I'm going to show the Maverick. This is without a run-up. It will turn to the right and then fade back to the left and end up relatively straight. So let's see what it does. I did miss the throw ever so slightly to the right, that's why it came out to the right of the line. And then with the wind, it ended up missing to the left because the tailwind will want to make it fight out earlier. And then I'll just use this field area to show off a few others. The Fortress, again, standstill backhand. You can see this one does not want to flip at all. And it's got some very nice fade at the end. Next up, the Explorer. This one is the shortest fairway that I bag. As you can see, it didn't quite get as far as the Fortress, but it still had that somewhat similar straight flight with a little bit of fade at the end. I'm going to go down to the mids now. The Fuse. This one will turn to the right as it flies, and maybe straighten out a little bit at the end. Whereas the MD3 kind of has a similar-ish flight to the Explorer, where it will go straight and just have a little bit of fade at the end. Now with my putters, the Peak, as you can see, a little bit of turn, and it ends up pretty much dead straight. Whereas the Jury, again, it's got that more overstable flight, so it's going to want to fade more. Then finally, the drivers. The Rive, for standstill, it will get a small amount of flip and then fade back. As you can see, that got quite a ways further than the Fortress or the Explorer. And then the Captain, coming back, it's got a little more turn and then a little bit less fade than the Rive. And these were all standstill backhands. I'll show off some run-ups on the next hole. Let's try to throw it in. Nope, a little high. So the reason I like the Peak, 2 reasons. 1, I did lose the Pure due to the inventory glitch during playtesting. And also, it's just very straight. So that's why I like it. So for run-ups, the Rive is going to have a good bit more flip. So even when thrown flat, it's going to want to get a decent bit of turn, but it still has the integrity to fade back. Next one, the Captain. This one's going to turn a lot more. And this is why I like it for the distance driver slot. It gets more turn, a little less fade, but it still has enough fade to fight out. Next, down to the fairways, the Explorer. You can see it's getting a little bit of flip, but it's still going to be able to fade out. Let's re-throw that one a little bit further right to hit the gap. Again, small amount of flip, a little bit of fade, ends up relatively straight. Didn't mean to end up here. I'll just throw them down this way. And the Maverick, very understable. You can see it really goes to the right on the run-up. Then finally, the Fortress. You can see it gets a tiny bit of flip early on, but it still really just wants to fade back. The Fortress or the FD1 is probably the best option for that overstable fairway. MD3 on a run-up is going to fly relatively similar to the Maverick or the River, which I don't have, but is effectively a shorter, just a slightly shorter Maverick. The Fuse has a similar but shorter flight to the Maverick in that it will just consistently turn throughout the flight. And then finally our putters, the Peak, just that slight bit of turn, tiny bit of fade, but still relatively straight. And then the Jury just has that straight flight, no flip, and some nice consistent fade. So that's the discs in my bag. And you can use the flight path indicator to see what a disc does. You can compare between discs to see how differently they fly. And then you can also buy discs from the shop. The few discs that come from courses, the Judge comes from shooting even par on Cannon Park Bronze. The Escape comes from 4 under on Cannon Park Silver. From Minoka Springs on the yellow layout, going 9 under, gets you the Peak. 9 under on blue gets you the Goat. 9 under on red unlocks the River. And then 9 under on the black layout, which is the hardest layout, is the Rive. And then finally, from Boulder, the Ruby layout, 9 under unlocks the MD3, Emerald layout unlocks the FD1, and then Sapphire layout unlocks the DD3. So that's the discs that you can unlock. Some of mine may differ a little bit due to being from the playtest courses. Like the versions of these courses in the playtest. But it's still relatively similar. The courses haven't changed since the playtest of Early Access. Thanks for watching. Hope to see y'all in game.